Welcome. Tonight, 25 old Zen stories told slowly, one by one. You do not need to remember them. You do not need to understand them. Let each story drift past like a leaf on slow water. In a few minutes, the screen will fade to black. Only the voice remains. Let it carry you down into sleep. The first story, The Overflowing Cup. A university professor climbed the long hill to visit an old master. He came to ask about Zen. The master welcomed him and put water on for tea. The professor began to talk. He spoke of all the books he had read, all the ideas he already held. The master listened and said nothing, and poured. The tea rose slowly to the rim. Then it spilled over the edge. It ran across the table and dripped onto the floor. The professor watched until he could not keep quiet. He said the cup was full. No more would go in. The master set the pot down. Like this cup, he said, you arrive already full. Empty yourself first, then there will be room for the tea. The second story, The Muddy Road. Two monks were walking home through a long rain. The road had softened into deep brown mud. At a flooded crossing stood a young woman in a silk robe. She could not step across without ruining it. The older monk bowed to her. Then he lifted her in his arms and carried her over the water. He set her down gently on the far side. He said nothing and walked on. The younger monk followed behind him for hours. His thoughts turned and turned. That night at the temple, he finally spoke. He said monks were forbidden to touch a woman. The older monk looked up from his rice. I set her down by the river, he said. It seems, my friend, that you are carrying her still. The third story, The Farmer Who Said Maybe. There was once an old farmer whose horse ran away in the night. The neighbors came to comfort him. Such bad luck, they said, shaking their heads. Maybe, said the farmer, and he went back to his work. The next week the horse returned and brought 3 wild horses down from the hills. Such good luck, the neighbors said. Maybe, said the farmer. His son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He fell and his leg was broken. Such bad luck, the neighbors said. Maybe, said the farmer. Soon soldiers came through the village, taking every young man to war. They passed over the son with the broken leg. The neighbours said how fortunate he was. The farmer only nodded and watched the evening settle over his fields. The fourth story, The Moon in the Window. A monk named Ryokan lived alone in a small hut at the foot of a mountain. He owned almost nothing: a robe, a bowl, a sleeping mat. One evening a thief crept in while Ryokan was out walking. There was nothing to steal. Ryokan returned and found him searching the bare room. The thief froze. "You have come such a long way," Ryokan said. "You should not leave with empty hands." He took off his robe and placed it in the thief's arms. The man hurried off into the dark. Ryokan sat down in the doorway bare-shouldered and looked up at the night. Poor man, he thought. I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon. The fifth story, The Best Cut of Meat. Before he became a master, Banzan wandered from town to town, still searching. One morning he passed through a market and paused near a butcher's stall. A customer was choosing carefully. He asked the butcher for his best cut of meat. The butcher spread his hands over the counter. "Everything here is the best," he said. "You will not find a single piece in this shop that is not the best." Banzan stood still in the noise of the market. The words opened something in him. There was nothing to compare, nothing lacking, nowhere at all. He walked on through the stalls lighter than before. His searching had come to an end. The sixth story, The Sound of One Hand. A boy named Toyo served in a temple where the master gave his students riddles to sit with. Toyo was only 12. He wanted a riddle of his own. The master told him this. 2 hands clapping make a sound. Now bring me the sound of one hand. Toyo bowed and went to his room and began to listen. He heard music drifting up from the village and brought that. The master shook his head. He brought dripping water, wind in the pines, the call of an owl. None of these were it. For almost a year, Toyo listened, and every sound fell away, one by one. At last, he came to the master with nothing at all. He had found the soundless sound. The master smiled. The seventh story, the strawberry. A man was crossing an open field when a tiger stepped out of the grass. He ran. The field ended at a cliff, and he went over the edge, catching a hanging vine. Above him, the tiger paced and waited. Far below, the rocks waited too. Then 2 mice, one white and one black, came out and began to gnaw the vine. Beside him, growing from a crack in the cliff, was a wild strawberry, ripe and red. Holding the vine with one hand, he reached out and picked it. He ate it slowly. It was the sweetest thing he had ever tasted. The 8th story, Nothing Exists. A young student crossed the country to visit a master named Dokuon, eager to show what he had learned. He announced his understanding proudly. The mind does not exist. The body does not exist. Nothing exists, he said. There is nothing to give and nothing to receive. Emptiness, only emptiness. Dokuon said nothing. He sat quietly smoking his bamboo pipe, watching the young man. Then, without a word, he leaned forward and struck the student with the pipe. The young man jumped up, flushed and angry, ready to argue. Dokuon drew on his pipe again. If nothing exists, he said gently, tell me where this anger comes from. The student had no answer. Outside, the garden went on being a garden. The 9th story. Is that so? In a small village lived a teacher named Hakwin, known for his pure and simple life. A girl in the village was found to be with child. Pressed by her angry parents, she named Hakuin as the father. The parents came to his door in a fury and accused him. Hakuin said only, "Is that so?" When the baby was born, they brought it to him. His good name was gone, but he took the child. He cared for it through the winter, begging milk and warmth from his neighbors. A year later, the girl could not bear it any longer. She confessed the true father was a young fisherman. The parents returned, ashamed, asking for the child back. Hakuin placed the baby gently in their arms. He said only, "Is that so?" Then he swept out his small house and the days went on. The 10th story, The Empty Boat. A man rowed his small boat across a wide lake in the hour before dark. A fog came down and settled on the water. He could see only a little way ahead. Out of the fog, another boat drifted toward him. It struck his boat on the side. He stood up, angry. He called out to the careless stranger at the oars. No one answered. The other boat was empty. It had slipped its rope somewhere up the shore. His anger had nowhere to go. It thinned out over the water like the fog. He sat back down. He rowed on toward the far shore, slow and quiet. For the rest of his life, when anger rose in him, he remembered the empty boat and let it drift past. The 11th story, Washing the Bowl. A young monk came to the master Joshu, eager to begin his training. He said, "I have just entered this monastery. Please teach me." Joshu asked whether the monk had eaten his morning rice. The monk said yes, he had eaten. Then wash your bowl, Joshu said. The monk stood still for a moment, holding the empty bowl in both hands. Then he carried it to the water and washed it, slowly, until it was clean. That was the whole teaching. He set the bowl down to dry in the sun. The 12th story, The General's Teacup. A great general owned an old teacup, rare and fine, worth more than his house. One evening he held it up to admire it, and it slipped in his hands. He caught it just above the floor. His heart pounded. Sweat stood on his skin. He sat with that feeling a long while. He had led armies. He had faced death many mornings without trembling. Yet no battle had ever made his heart pound like this one small cup. He understood then what the trembling was made of. It was made of holding on. The general set the cup on the stones of the courtyard and let it break. After that, he drank his tea from a plain bowl, and his hands were steady. The 13th story, The Stone in the Garden. A travelling monk stopped for the night at a quiet mountain temple. In the evening, he sat with the old teacher beside the fire, and they spoke of the mind. The traveller said that everything, The hills, the moon, the great stone in the garden lived inside the mind. The old teacher looked out at the garden for a long moment. "Then your head must be very heavy," he said, "carrying a stone that size wherever you go." The traveller had no answer. The fire settled. Outside, the stone sat in the moonlight. It asked nothing of anyone. It simply rested, as it had rested for 1,000 years. The 14th story, The Gates of Paradise. A proud soldier came to an old master and asked whether heaven and hell were real. The master looked him up and down and said no lord would ever want such a shabby soldier. The soldier's face went dark. His hand moved to the handle of his sword. The master watched the blade rise and said quietly, "Here open the gates of hell." The soldier stopped. He saw what he was doing and where his anger had carried him. Slowly he lowered the sword and slid it back into its sheath and bowed. The master said softly, "Here open the gates of heaven." The soldier walked home through the evening, his sword arm loose, his steps unhurried. The 15th story, The Burned Hut. For 20 years, an old woman fed a monk who lived in a hut on her land. She brought him rice in the morning and cloth for his robe when winter came. One day she wished to know what all her care had grown, so she sent a young girl to test him. The girl held the monk close and asked him softly how it felt. He said, "An old tree on a cold rock in winter. No warmth anywhere." The girl went back and told the old woman what he had said. "20 years, the old woman said. 20 years of rice, and he never learned one kind word." She walked out to the hut that evening and burned it to the ground. The fire lit the field for a little while, and then the night came back. The 16th story, 60 letters. The teacher Tanzan spent his last morning writing 60 small letters, one for each of his friends. Every letter said the same thing. "I am leaving this world today. This is my last word to you." He asked a student to carry them to the post and to walk there slowly. Then he put away his brush and his ink and folded his hands. He sat in his usual place, in his usual way, as on any other afternoon. And quietly, without any fuss, he died, the way a letter is finished and set down. For days afterward, the letters travelled out across the country, arriving one by one like slow snow. The 17th story, The Last Word. An old master lay dying in the small room where he had taught for 50 years. His students gathered close around the bed, waiting for his final teaching. One of them remembered that the master loved a certain sweet rice cake and hurried to the market for it. The old man ate the cake slowly, and a little light came back into his eyes. The students leaned in and asked for one last word, something to keep after he was gone. The master smiled at them all. He said softly, "This cake is very good." Those were his last words. He closed his eyes and did not speak again. The students sat with him through the night, and the room smelled faintly of sweet rice. The 18th story, The Polished Tile. Long ago, in a mountain temple, a young monk sat in meditation from morning until night. He wanted to become a Buddha. He held this wish the way a hand holds a stone. His old teacher watched him for many days. Then, one afternoon, the teacher picked up a broken tile. The old man sat down nearby and began to rub the tile against a flat rock. The sound went on for hours, slow circles, stone on stone. At last, the young monk asked what he was doing. The teacher said he was polishing the tile into a mirror. The monk said a tile could never become a mirror. The teacher nodded slowly. And sitting cannot be forced into a Buddha, he said. Then the two of them rested there. The mountain held them both, the tile, the rock, and the fading light. The 19th story, Joshu's dog. A monk came to the old master Joshu with a question that had followed him for years. He asked if a dog has the nature of a Buddha. The courtyard was quiet around them. Joshu answered with a single small word, moo. Not yes, and not quite no. The monk carried that word away like a smooth stone in his pocket. He held it while he swept the halls. He held it while he ate his rice. Years passed. The word grew lighter and lighter until it weighed nothing at all. One morning he set it down, and the whole sky was simply there. Out by the gate, the dog slept in the sun, needing no answer. The 20th story, The Flag and the Wind. Two monks stood outside a temple watching a flag move on its tall pole. One said the flag was moving. The other said no, the wind was moving. They went back and forth softly, the way tired men argue at the end of the day. An old teacher was passing through the gate. He stopped and listened for a while. He told them it was not the flag and it was not the wind. The mind was moving. The two monks fell silent. The flag went on rippling in the evening air. Inside them, something settled, like water after the wind has passed. The 21st story, The Finger and the Moon. A nun once asked an old teacher to explain the great matter of awakening. The teacher lifted one finger and pointed at the moon above the pines. "All my words are only a finger," he said. "The moon is what you came for." Many people study the finger, he told her. They measure it and praise it and memorize its shape. And all the while the moon rises on its own, asking nothing. The nun looked up. The moon was full that night, resting over the mountain. She stopped watching the hand. She let the light come to her. It had been there all along, patient as water. The 22nd story, chopping wood, carrying water. A student climbed a long path to visit a hermit known for his deep peace. He asked the hermit what his life was like before his awakening. The hermit said, "I chopped wood, and I carried water from the stream." The student asked what his life was like after. The hermit smiled at the fire. "I chop wood," he said. "I carry water." Nothing outside had changed. The axe was the same and the path to the stream was the same. But now the wood split easily, and the water felt light in his hands. Evening came, and the hermit carried in the last armful of wood. Down the hill, the stream kept moving in the dark, quietly doing its one task. The 23rd story, The Tea Master and the Swordsman. There was once a tea master who had never held a sword in his life. By accident, he offended a wandering swordsman, and the man demanded a duel at dawn. The tea master went to an old sword teacher and asked how to meet his end well. The teacher asked him to prepare tea one last time, there in the small room. The tea master did, and his hands were calm, every motion complete, nothing left over. Meet him the way you make tea, the teacher said, whole and unafraid. At dawn, the tea master stood with the borrowed sword raised, empty of everything but that moment. The swordsman looked at him for a long time, then he bowed and walked away. The morning went on. Somewhere water was already warming for tea. The 24th story, Great Waves. There was once a wrestler of enormous strength whose name meant great waves. In private, he could throw any man. In public, he lost every match. Even his own students defeated him. He went to a Zen master and asked for help. The master said, "Stay in the temple tonight. Do not think of wrestling." "You are those great waves," he said. "Picture them sweeping everything before them." The wrestler sat through the night. At first, his mind wandered. Then, slowly, he felt only the waves. By dawn, the temple itself seemed to rise and fall like the sea. The master smiled in the morning. "Nothing can move you now," he said. That day the wrestler won. From then on, no man in Japan could throw him. The 25th story, The Master by the River. An old master walked all day beside a slow green river. He had taught for many years. Now his students could walk on their own. In the late afternoon, he sat down in the deep grass beneath a willow. He listened to the water going by. It had somewhere to be and no hurry at all. The light grew soft and low. The river kept its quiet voice. The master's eyes closed on their own, the way evening comes. His breathing slowed to match the water, in and out, slow and slower. The river went on without him, soft over the stones. And the old man slept, held by the grass, under the darkening sky.